Luxurious feast was set. Yet, I got half-price leftovers. Daughters-in-law should eat simply. Mother-in-law sneered. I smiled. It's always like this. Suddenly, my father-in-law slammed the table. The table was set with a luxurious feast. Steam rose and the aroma of the meat whetted the appetite. Yet what was placed in front of me was a discounted supermarket food with a half-price sticker. How many times have I endured this humiliation? The daughter-in-law should eat something easy. Her low, chilling voice broke the silence at the table. It's always like this, so I smiled faintly and responded. At that moment, my father-in-law put down his fork. He slammed the table with a look of rage. The sound echoed through the room. I held my breath, unsure of what was happening. Anger blazed in his eyes. No one realized that this theory would completely change the atmosphere of the room. My name is Melinda. I've been married for 3 years. I met my husband, Ryan, during our university days. Back then, he was sincere, kind, and the ideal partner. But after marrying him, I learned that his kindness extended only to his family, particularly to his mother and older sister. Since the beginning of our marriage, I've struggled with how to deal with my in-laws. My mother-in-law, Heather, always found a way to say, "You're the daughter-in-law, so." My sister-in-law, Sarah, never bothered to hide her condescending attitude towards me. At first, I thought, this is my new family. If I try my best, they'll surely accept me. Marriage is also about adapting to a new environment. I believed that by showing sincerity, I could build a good relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. But all of my efforts ended up being in vain. Heather blatantly demonstrated her belief that fulfilling duties as a daughter-in-law was only natural. She never once expressed gratitude, not even a simple thank you. Sarah would make snide remarks saying things like, "Daughter-in-laws are so convenient, aren't they?" I felt pathetic, only able to respond with a forced smile. One day, I tried expressing my dissatisfaction to Ryan. "Your mom and sister don't mean harm, but it feels like I'm being singled out. Come on, you're overthinking it." It might be true, but I honestly feel like I'm the only one being targeted. It's really hard. Look, relationships between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law are like this everywhere. His words left me speechless. For Ryan, this was within the bounds of normal, but I thought differently. Heather and sister-in-law clearly found me unpleasant. Sarah's cold glances and my mother-in-law's fake smiles concealed harsh words. It felt as if they were saying, "If you were here, this family would be perfect." For a long time, I blamed myself. Am I not trying hard enough? Should I have handled things more skillfully? But recently, I realized that the problem wasn't about my efforts. It was their ingrained prejudice that daughters-in-law should always serve the family. No matter how hard I tried, it seemed impossible to change that mindset. Ryan didn't mean any harm, but his indifference only made me feel more isolated. I could feel something inside me gradually growing cold, especially during the annual New Year's family trips, which had become a source of torment. Before we got married, Ryan told me these trips were family events, but in reality, they were nothing short of hell. As soon as we arrived at the hotel, my mother-in-law would start giving me orders. "Melinda, put the luggage here. Oh, and lay out the duvets for this room." "Yes, understood." "Wait a minute, isn't that too slow? Can't you do things quicker?" "I'm sorry, I'll do it right away." Watching me scramble, my father-in-law sat quietly reading his newspaper. Sarah sighed and muttered under her breath, "You're really unreliable. Ryan, could you help me? Mom asked you to do it, so you should take care of it." This was always how it went. Even when I sought Ryan's help, he would leave everything to me. During the trips, I was nothing more than an errand girl. I never had a moment to relax. After every trip, I thought, I never want to go again. This is the only time of year when everyone gets together. "Let's make the most of it," he'd always say. But I'm the only one working, and honestly, it's exhausting. It's all in your head. Mom and my sister are definitely grateful to you. His words left me unable to argue back. Maybe they were grateful, I told myself. But deep inside, my dissatisfaction kept growing. And once again, the dreaded New Year's family trip was approaching. In my heart, I felt a swirl of dread at the thought of enduring the same pain again. As I washed dishes in the kitchen after dinner, I gathered my courage to ask Ryan, "Ryan, do we really have to go this year?" Ryan lounged on the sofa in the living room and fiddling with his phone, answered without even looking up. "Of course, Mom and my sister are looking forward to it." His casual tone sent an uneasy feeling through my chest. But I don't look forward to it at all. Every year, it feels like I'm the only one working. Being in the atmosphere is just so exhausting. Exhausting? Oh, don't exaggerate. We're family, so it's normal to help out a little. His words made me raise my voice involuntarily. "Helping out? Why is it always just me? Your mom and sister just bossed me around without lifting a finger to help." "You don't have to put it that way. They don't mean any harm. You're just too sensitive." His dismissive response struck a nerve. Ryan always brushed off his mother and sister's actions. It was clear he was just protecting his own position. So my feelings don't matter? You're telling me to just endure whatever they throw at me? I'm not saying that. I'm just asking you to consider their feelings too. Don't you see that I feel like I'm not even seen as a family? Ryan opened his mouth to say something, but then stopped, averting his gaze. His silence only fueled my frustration. Fine, if me going is all that matters, I'll go. But I'm not going to stay silent and obedient this year. With that, I slammed the dishes onto the counter. Ryan stayed quiet, returning to his phone as if nothing had happened. Watching his indifference back, I solidified my resolve. This year, something had to change. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself like this any longer. The New Year's trip proceeded under my mother-in-law's control as always. She decided on the destination, arranged the schedule, and assigned me all the tasks. Melinda, since Ryan's grandfather is joining us this year, don't make any mistakes. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. Her words made me freeze for a moment. Heather always applied pressure indirectly. Ryan's grandfather, her father-in-law, was in his late 80s. Despite his age, he was active, with strong legs and fluent Japanese, having lived in Japan. I had only met him once, at our wedding. At that time, he was cheerful and charismatic, leaving a strong impression. However, I hated watching my mother-in-law and sister-in-law put on a facade around him. When Heather spoke with this tone, it usually meant she had specific expectations, but she never explicitly stated what they were. What exactly should I be careful about? Are there any particular manners I should follow when speaking with grandfather? Well, he values tradition, so don't act too casually. You must conduct yourself properly as a daughter-in-law. What do you mean by conduct yourself properly? My attempt to clarify seemed to irritate her. Figure it out yourself. You're a daughter-in-law, so you should know these things. Yes, of course. But since it's my first time, I don't want to make a mistake. If you have any advice, I'd appreciate it. My desperate plea was met with an exasperated sigh. Heather exchanged a glance with Sarah. Melinda, if you can't even figure out something like that, it's a bit disappointing. But surely, you can at least nod along to what he says or offer polite comments. Or can't you? Understood. I'll ensure I respond appropriately during conversations with grandfather. That's to be expected. Don't embarrass us during this trip. The conversation ended there, but I knew they didn't want to provide specific advice. What they wanted was for me to perform flawlessly under vague expectations. No matter what I did, they would never be satisfied. As I prepared for the trip, both physically and mentally, their sarcastic remarks continued unabated. I thought you finished these simple arrangements much faster. You still lack experience as a daughter-in-law, don't you? Well, it can't be helped, but you'll have to be more efficient in the future. I'm sorry. I'll keep that in mind. While I apologized, a bitter frustration simmered in my heart. No one offered to help, yet all responsibility was placed squarely on me. My father-in-law remained silent, hidden behind his newspaper. When I vented to Ryan, he still didn't try to understand my situation. Ryan, I'm doing all the work by myself. Can't you see that? Mom said it's fine, so there's no problem. No problem? Do you even realize how hard this is for me? It's just trip preparations. You're blowing this out of proportion. His thoughtless words made me raise my voice again. It's not just trip preparations. I'm doing everything, and no one is helping me. Mom said you should handle it, so just do it. We're family after all. His words were family, stabbed at my heart. To him, family meant that I, as the daughter-in-law, should take on a servant-like role. The day of the trip finally arrived. In the early morning, Heather and Sarah bombarded me with instructions. Melinda, make sure you double-check the luggage. A forgotten item would be a disaster. Ryan will drive, so you'll need to navigate from the passenger seat. Why do I have to drive? I don't want to. Ryan's face clearly showed his displeasure as he complained. I thought to myself, why didn't he say this earlier? Then Melinda can drive instead. It's decided. Sighing, I prepared to drive, while no one offered a word of acknowledgement or gratitude. Once we got into the car, Heather and Sarah happily chatted in the back seat. My father-in-law stared silently out the window. Ryan sat in the passenger seat, occasionally chiming in to agree with his mother or sister. Another year, another painful trip, I thought. But this year felt different. Deep down, my determination to no longer endure this had been growing stronger every day. I knew this trip had to be the turning point. Upon arriving at the hotel, Heather's micromanaging resumed immediately. Melinda, adjust the duvet in this room so that grandfather can be comfortable. Also, confirm the dinner time to ensure he isn't kept waiting. My frustration reached its peak as the instructions piled on. But this year, I wasn't going to let it end like every other year. I resolved to speak my mind during this trip. I would no longer allow myself to be belittled after all I had done for this family. As expected, I was treated like a servant throughout the trip. Carrying luggage, handling minor chores around the hotel, everything was my responsibility. Heather and Sarah didn't even pretend to help. They sat comfortably on cushions, laughing and saying, "It's so convenient having a daughter-in-law. Melinda, move that back to the corner. It's in the way. Oh, and bring me some tea. We're a bit tired." I could only sigh in response to their endless demands. Why do they act as if this is their right? I thought. Meanwhile, Rian fiddled with his phone as if none of this concerned him. "Thanks for handling everything, Melinda. It's a big help." His words, spoken as if it were the most natural thing in the world, only added to my irritation. No matter how much I pleaded for help, he wouldn't lift a finger. Instead, he simply passed on more instructions from his mother and sister. "By the way, when is grandfather arriving?" I asked Ryan, curious about his absence. "He'll come down for dinner. Until then, just relax." The word relax made me laugh bitterly. How could I possibly relax when I was left to handle all the chores? Heather and Sarah exchanged knowing looks of relief. Honestly, it's such a hassle having him come back from America so suddenly. If he's going to live there, he should stay there. Exactly. He shouldn't cause us so much trouble. If only he'd just leave some money behind and go back. They started a full-blown rant about grandfather. I kept my head down, focusing on my tasks, unsure how to respond. But inside, I felt a swirl of complex emotions. I wish I could expose their two-faced behavior, I thought. They acted so sweet in front of him, but behind his back, their venom was endless. Their bad-mouthing only grew more intense. Last time, he even brought in his suitcase and demanded we do his laundry. He has no manners. Exactly. Why doesn't he just ask the daughter-in-law? That's her job. Suddenly, the door slid open with a loud bang. Everin turned to see grandfather standing there, having arrived earlier than expected. Despite being in his 80s, he stood tall with a commanding presence. His sharp gaze was fixed directly on Heather and Sarah. "You all seem to be having quite the lively conversation. What's so exciting?" His deep voice froze the room. Heather and Sarah turned pale in an instant. "Oh, dear here, early father. We weren't prepared yet. I'm so sorry." Yes. We were just discussing how to make you comfortable." They suddenly adopted sugary voices, bowing excessively. The sight of their sudden shift was almost laughable. "I see. So you were preparing for me. Thank you for the effort, but I wonder, was it burdensome for you?" His words were gentle, yet carried a sharp undertone. Heather and Sarah shook their heads frantically. "Not at all. We're so happy to have you here. It's such an honor." "Exactly. Spending time as a family is such a blessing." Grandfather nodded slowly, but his eyes were penetrating, as if seeing through them. "I'm glad to hear that. I too am happy to spend time with family. But if I were an inconvenience, I would sincerely apologize." Heather and Sarah stumbled over their words, trying to reassure him. No. You can never be an inconvenience, Father. We're truly honored to have you with us." I watched their desperate attempts to save face, whispering to myself, "Serves them right." They clearly hadn't expected grandfather to walk in on their rant. "Now then, Melinda." He suddenly called my name, catching me off guard. "Yes? What is it? You seem to have been working hard, being tasked with so much." Before I could respond, Heather interjected. "Oh, no. Melinda is just so thoughtful and proactive." Yes. We won a doubt, but she insisted on handling everything herself. Their excuses were transparent, attempting to shift the narrative in their favor. Grandfather listened quietly, but occasionally furrowed his brow. "Family is meant to work together, don't you agree?" "Of course. We'll make sure to help more from now on." "Yes. We shouldn't rely so much on Melinda." Their words were hollow, clearly meant to appease him. "Melinda, thank you for your efforts. I've been observing everything. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to tell me. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your kindness." I bowed deeply, grateful for his words. As dinner time approached, the hotel staff brought out an array of exquisite dishes, the room filled with the aroma of delicious meals and the steam atop gray steak. The presentation of the dishes was beautiful, bringing a festive atmosphere to the table. However, nothing was placed in front of me. Confused, I stayed seated, unsure of what to do. Heather, noticing my unease, smirked and spoke up. "Let's keep the steak just for the family." The staff looked apologetic as they placed the prepared food box in front of me. It was a simple meal with the supermarket's half-price sticker still attached. Everyone else at the table, my father-in-law, sister-in-law, father-in-law, and Ryan, enjoyed the luxurious feast. The contrast between their feast and my meal was stark. "This is enough for the daughter-in-law, right? Simple things suit you better than extravagance." Her cold smile was laced with malice. "It's so admirable how you're satisfied with the half-priced food." Their taunts left me speechless. I stayed silent, my fork trembling in my hand. My father-in-law quietly ate, pretending not to notice the exchange. Come on, Melinda. Mom went through all this effort for the family. Be grateful. His thoughtless words ignited a fire in my chest, but I held it back. I couldn't say anything, but someone else spoke up. The daughter-in-law gets half-price food. His calm, low voice cut through the room like a blade. The air in the room became heavy as all eyes turned to him. Anger flickered across his face, a rare sight. It's always like this, so I'm fine. I forced a small smile, trying to diffuse the situation. Suddenly, grandfather set his forks down with a sharp motion. He slammed his palm against the table, the sound reverberating through the room. What is the meaning of this? His voice thundered with authority. Oh, father, it's not a big deal. We just adjusted the meal to suit Melinda. Adjusted the meal? You claim to share a family meal, yet you treat her as an outsider? Have you no shame? His harsh words drained the color from my mother-in-law's face. Sarah nervously tried to explain. Grandfather, this was a last-minute decision. We miscalculated the portions, so grandfather narrowed his eyes, staring at her intently. I silently thought, who spent days preparing for this trip? Now you claim it's a mistake? Miscalculated the portions? From the very beginning, you never intended to prepare a proper meal for Melinda, did you? My mother-in-law and sister-in-law exchanged panicked glances. No. It was just an oversight. Oversight? Do you think I would accept such an excuse? If you call her family, you must treat her as such. Ignoring her is unacceptable. Heather and Sarah fell silent, their faces pale. Ryan sat with his head down, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Ryan, what kind of man doesn't stand up for his wife? You dare call yourself family? If you can't protect your wife, then leave this house immediately. Wait, please. His panicked voice was pitiful as he begged. I stayed seated, watching the scene unfold in stunned silence. Melinda has endured far too much. Her effort to contribute to this family is commendable. Those who take her effort for granted have no right to call themselves family. His words brought me to tears, a mix of relief and vindication. The room was frozen in silence, the weight of grandfather's words pressing down on everyone. Heather and Sarah sat with their heads bowed, unable to respond. Ryan remained silent, staring at the table. Ryan, I expected better from you. If you can't defend your wife, you're not fit to be called a husband. As far as I'm concerned, you're no longer worthy of this family's name. No, please. I'll apologize. I'll fix this. Grandfather's piercing gaze turned to Ryan, his voice steady but firm. Your apology isn't owed to me. It's owed to Melinda. Do it properly. Ryan looked at me, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Melinda, I'm sorry. I'll change. I promise. His words were desperate, but they carried no sincerity. I looked at him feeling no anger, just a deep wariness. The steak continued to steam, the once festive meal now forgotten. I reached for a piece of meat from Ryan's untouched plate and took a bite. Delicious, I thought aloud, surprised by how good it was. A bitter smile formed as I realized Ryan had been enjoying meals like this without me all along. If only he has stood by me against his mother's and sister's mistreatment. If only he has said, let's share this together. Things might have turned out differently. But he had done nothing, allowing the cruelty to continue unchecked. Melinda, I apologize on behalf of this shameful family. It pains me to see you treated this way. Thank you, grandfather. Your words mean a lot to me. I bowed deeply, but inside, my decision was already made. Grandfather, if it's possible, could you hire me in Ryan's place at your company? The words slipped out before I had fully thought them through. I had always been interested in working at a foreign company, but the opportunity had never arisen. Now with Ryan being dismissed, I thought there might be an opening. That's an excellent idea. Really? Yes, absolutely. We'd be lucky to have someone like you. Ryan's face twisted in shock. What? But well, I guess that could work. If Melinda's getting paid, we'll manage somehow. His casual acceptance made me laugh bitterly. What are you talking about, Ryan? I'm divorcing you. The color drained from Ryan's face. I'll be asking for alimony as well. Oh, and about the rumors of your affair with the receptionist? Are they true? If they are, the alimony will be doubled. Ryan stammered, unable to form a coherent response. I had already decided this would be my last New Year's trip with your family. With the divorce, I won't have to see any of you again. My words were calm and resolute, leaving no room for argument. Ryan's face turned white as a sheet. I turned to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law with a polite smile. And with that, my good daughter-in-law campaign is over. I hope we never meet again. Goodbye. I stood up, leaving the room. Grandfather followed suit, declaring he would return to his accommodations. Heather grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. Wait, Melinda. Please give us another chance. We'll apologize. It was just a little jealousy, I swear. We won't do this again. It's too late for that. Goodbye. Her wail echoed through the room as she collapsed onto the floor. Sarah and Ryan were equally shaken, unable to stop me. I left the room with my head held high. At the entrance, Grandfather was waiting for me. I'm truly sorry for everything, Melinda. Regarding the divorce, I'll introduce you to an excellent lawyer. His sincere apology touched me deeply. True to his words, the lawyer he referred me to was exceptionally skilled. The divorce was finalized, and I received a fair amount of alimony. Ryan resisted at first, but when the lawyer mentioned the possibility of taking the case to court, he relented. After losing his job, Ryan struggled to find new employment. He tried working part-time for a while, but eventually became a shut-in at his parents' home. Without Grandfather's financial support, the family's situation worsened. Heather and Sarah called me repeatedly, begging for help. Their desperate voices were filled with anger and frustration. Melinda, please, can't you talk to Grandfather for us? I responded coldly, that's none of my business. Then I blocked their numbers. If they tried contacting me from another number, I planned to have my lawyer handle it. But knowing them, I doubted they'd go that far. Meanwhile, I started my new job at Grandfather's company. It was a fresh start, and though challenging, it was fulfilling. The work was demanding, but compared to my years as an overworked, mistreated daughter-in-law, it felt like nothing. Ryan had been coasting on his position as the grandson of the company's founder. In contrast, I worked diligently, earning the respect and trust of my colleagues. One day, a senior employee approached me with tears in their eyes. Thank you for joining us, Melinda. Your hard work is a blessing to this company. Their words warmed my heart, reminding me why I made this change. As for a remarriage, I wasn't thinking about it yet. If I ever did, I would make sure to find someone who truly valued and respected me. I knew I had to cultivate better judgment to avoid repeating past mistakes. Grandfather's example inspired me. He was a man of integrity, respected across cultures and continents. I aspired to build a life as independent and dignified as it is. For now, I focused on excelling at my new job. Each day brought new challenges, but I embraced them with enthusiasm. As I immersed myself in my work, I realized how far I had come. The years of being mistreated felt like a distant memory. I have found freedom, respect, and a sense of purpose. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy.